How are we doing today? Wayne Gravatt here again. As we talked about in our last video, and I hope you saw that when we were talking about Breaking Bad and the improved Charlie Special. This particular fly right here is the fly that I drop on those. Guides drop on that. This is my best-selling fly. This is my #1 choice anywhere that I go. Never fish the water. This is the #1 that I go to. I start with this fly. My son is a big fisherman, and he's the same way. So you got to learn this one. It's called Jumpin' Jack Flash. So let's take a look at the materials and tools that we need for this particular fly. So we got Peacock Crystal Flash, Olive Marabou in this case. I tie this also in black and brown. Hungarian Hun. I use 14 skins a year of that particular feather. Strung peacock. Note the length of this strung peacock. I try to buy the longest that I can find. This is 10 inches long. It just makes it a lot easier to deal with. Okay, the hook in this case is a 2X long heavy wire 8. That's probably my biggest seller, but I tie this flies from 16s to 2s. And sometimes with a 2, I basically fish it like a streamer. People have asked me what this imitates. I don't know what it imitates, but the fish like it, and that's really all that counts. So let's look at the tools that we have for this lineup. So we've got 6/0 thread. For the wire, we've got 28 gauge wire. Notice that with the copper wire, I don't go with tinsel. Tinsel tends to be weak. It doesn't hold up. Fish bite through it. Not a good way to go. Go with the copper wire. We got the whip finisher, hackle pliers, scissors. Again, keep in mind that I keep that to keep the rough edges off me. Just a fingernail file. The wire brush, which I won't need for this one, and head cement. All right, let's get started. So, we got a comment that, I took it for granted that people knew which end of the bead to put in. So if you look at the bead, one end has a very large opening, the beveled end, and the other one has the small end. So when you're putting a bead on a hook, and this particular bead is a 3/16 bead for this size 8, you're going to go through the small end so that the small end abuts against the eye of the hook. Okay? So let's put it in the vise. Notice that I don't leave a tremendous amount of point out there. We did get a comment, and I want to show you something here. Let me put this on there, and we'll address that comment. So we're going to put a nice base on there. Okay. So we're going to get rid of this tag. Say, lo and behold, at any point when you're tying this fly that you break your thread or you cut it on the end. Well, you can be in big trouble. I used to think, well, okay, I'm going to have to start over. Not a big deal. So we're just going to restart the thread, and you can do this at any point, even on the head and the finish. Not a big deal. Just make sure that you lash thread over the top of the start of the thread when you started it back on there. But that's not a problem in the least. Okay? So we're going to take this marabou feather, and you would think, you would look at that and you think, wow, that's a big waste. But we're going to strip that back. And I go through 2 pounds of this a year. That's a lot of feathers to wrap your head around. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but for those of you that deal with feathers, it's a lot of feathers. So we're going to hold that up there, and that's about the length we want right there. So again, I'm going to let my fingers be the guide. That's the length that we want. So the end of my fingers is right where the thread is going to be. So we're going to get rid of that. So we're going to set it right over the top of the shank of the hook, right up against the bead. Okay? Now we're going to lash that down to the top of the hook shank. Bring the thread back. All the time I'm holding on to the end of the marabou, and I'm holding it tight too. Okay? So we're going to get that lashed down really nice so that when we're done, we're probably right over about the hook. Let me show you just a little trick. Say you got that tail a little bit too long. You can just push it forward like that, which I don't want here. And you can shorten that tail and then make it up with your thread. Very easy. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is put on the wire. You'll note too that when we're doing this fly, that as we tied the marabou, it has more volume on this end, and as we bring it back this way, this is the thinner. You can see that the shank is thinner here than it is here. So that's then why we want to build some uniformity right here. So we're going to tie on that copper wire right there. The beauty of this copper wire too is it's stiff, so it'll hang back out of your way, where tinsel hangs and it's right in your road. Not so good. Okay, so now we're going to take about, I don't know, 5 or 6. Not all of these heralds are the same thickness, but it's such an advantage to have this long herald. I can't tell you, but it's a little hard to find. Okay, we're going to get rid of those tags. And we're going to lay that again on that shorter, narrower portion of the hook. Okay. Now, notice that I just didn't let go of that I kept hold of that all the time. Okay. Now we're just going to use that pitch and catch technique, side by side, just like that. I see how a little piece break off right there. That's no problem. Oh, I had a couple of them break. Oh, that's okay. Get rid of that little tag that broke right there. Now, this is a good time to show you what we can do, because a couple of those broke. So let's just bring that thread right back to right there where the break was, and just reattach that peacock, and we'll just pick it up right there. It's not rocket science. There's lots of things that you can do if you make a mistake that then nobody knows about. So that was a good part right there. Okay, we're going to get rid of those. Now we're going to bring that copper wire. We're going to make sure it's up on top. We need probably about 5 wraps. So we're going to try and make those pretty parallel. Bring that up right there. A couple soft times around. Good. Okay, now when I get right here, I usually try to bend that down with my fingers or nails. Just like that copper wire. Okay. Now we're going to take about, I'd say there's about 8. Again, 6, 8, 9, not a big deal. We're going to cut that end off. That's about the length that we want, but you can measure it when you get it up there if it's too long. It's kind of like cutting lumber, though. If you cut it too long, you can correct it, but if you cut it too short, she's a throwaway. So we're just going to set that on there. That's about the right length that we want. You can't quite see that. I apologize for that. Going to lash that to the top of the hook, just like that. Looks good. Nice flash with that fly. Now, we're going to take this Hungarian partridge. Let me get this so you can see this good. So we're going to take this Hungarian partridge feather, and we're going to take this down off the bottom, off both sides, just like that. Okay. A little more on that side. Now, I like to on the far side of the feather, I like to start it just a little bit different. So those are see that recessed area right there? So I'm going to leave about a tag of about that big. Okay? We're going to set that on there. Notice, it's a very curved type feather. So we want the curve to go back over the hook, so we want the shiny side up. That's the dull side, that's the shiny side. So we're going to set that right up on top of the hook, just like that. Tie in that little tag. Perfect. Pull that back. Now, wrapping these Hungarian partridges, they have a weak vein in the middle of the feather there. So sometimes they break. So you want to, when you attach your pliers, and I'll try to get my hands out of the way so you can see this. You want to get some of that vein. What I like to do is to pull these out just a little bit. It helps them to go around there. So now, semi-gently, I'm going to wrap that around the hook just like that. One time, get it locked in, tie it off. Perfect. And you can see how nice that sets back over the hook. Now, one of the things that's kind of a trademark of all of my nymphs, and it's different than most people that I see tie flies. Most people say they're tying a prince nymph or whatever. They just use thread here between the feather and the bead. I don't like that approach. I use dub there, or in this particular case, I use some more peacock. I like the profile it gives. And if you're using shorter peacock, use 2. But with this longer one, I can get away with 1. Now you notice at the end of the peacock has this part of it that's wasted. You just get rid of it. So now I'm going to set that right in there, right between the feather and the bead. Just like that. And I'm just going to wrap that in so I get a nice kind of a little hot area, or whatever you'd want to call it. Kind of holds that feather back. I'm going to keep hold of the peacock with my right hand. A couple loose wraps over it, just like that. Perfect. Okay. And this is a good point to show you. I got another comment that people didn't quite understand to use the whip finisher. So let's do that. Okay, so when you got the whip finisher, the first thing you do is to catch it in that notch right there on the bottom of the whip finisher. Then I'm going to catch it with that little loop. And when I set it up there and I bring my bobbin back to the back of the fly, you can see that basically that I have a triangle there. So if I start around it, and I'm going to do this nice and slow so you can see. Give me a little more thread. Nice and slow. So we're just going to go around there just like that, about 5 or 6 times. And then that will pull that back under it. So I'm just going to slide that right off the back, right down that loop. There we go. Got it locked in there really nice. Cut that out of there. All right. Again, I don't head cement every fly, but for this purposes, we're going to do that. Okay. And we're just going to we're going to get that head cement right against that peacock and the bead. Perfect. As you can see there, that gives it a really nice profile, this nice collar in there. It looks a lot better than just thread. You can see that. Maybe a little light would help, and you can see that a little bit better. Yeah, that's better. But that gives it a really nice profile, and that's just kind of one of the trademarks of my flies. But again, this is the fly. You've got to learn to tie this fly. This fly is going to catch fish everywhere you go. Absolutely going to catch fish. And it's easy to tie. That's the beauty of this fly. So again, jumping jack flash, fish it off of a dropper, fantastic. Double nymph setup, I'll show you some other nymphs. I put this one on top and fish one off the bottom, or sometimes vice versa. But this is one that you got to do. So I would like you to, if you like this video, if you like this fly, give us a thumbs up. As always, we had a couple comments that we addressed there. Your comments would be certainly welcomed. I'd love you to subscribe, and I hope you're there for our next fly, because there's some good ones coming up. Thank you very much. Give them hell.